All right, so again, degeneration is reversible if we remove the insult. There's a lot of things going on in a cell that's degenerating. Here they are, making less protein, we're increasing lipid, starting to lose stuff, we're having trouble with water balance, our cell is swelling, we're blebbing our membrane, so this cell is trying really hard not to die. The pH in the cell is going down. Lots and lots of things, but again, our membranes are intact, our organelle and cell membranes are intact. We can recover if we remove the insult. So that's this guy, that's the "this is fine" talk. It's really not fine, but it will be fine if we remove the insult. We're still technically alive. Here's the dividing line, right here. So once these things in orange happen, we have progressed to irreversible injury and we are dying. No matter if you remove the insult or not, it's too late. These three things are the point of no return. So once you lose integrity of your membranes, whether that's your cell membrane or your organelle membranes, dead. There is no way you can get back fluid homeostasis if you don't have a membrane demarcating you from your environment. Once you have released and activated intracellular lysosomes, so again, lysosomes are membrane-bound organelles. Once we lose membrane integrity, your lysosomal enzymes are floating around in your cell, and their job is literally to digest cellular things. So they're literally eating the cell from the inside out. You're not coming back from that. The third important thing that happens that makes this non-reversible is loss of control of our calcium metabolism. So this is that dystrophic mineralization that happens when cells and tissues die. Cells are little bags of solutes, they're also little bags of calcium. Once we lose control of actively maintaining and metabolizing that, calcium is just going to start depositing at the site of tissue damage. Here is that visually. So normal cell to degenerating cell, everything's still swollen but still intact. We can recover. If we don't remove the insult, we progress to death. Loss of cell membranes, activation of intracellular enzymes, loss of calcium metabolism. It's over for this cell. That's this guy. Not fine anymore. Okay, so this usually happens if the insult is either more severe or more persistent for long. So either we're dealing with something that's harder to recover from, or we've been dealing with it for a longer time and it just has not given us a break to recover, right? Essentially what happens is you pass this point of no return. Those three hallmarks are the point of no return. We are now in irreversible injury. This form of cell death that we're talking about is called necrosis. Oncotic, onco, like oncotic pressure, it's basically the necrosis equivalent of hydrophic degeneration. So I'm usually just going to say necrosis. The oncotic part is implied.
Do all three of them occur, or can one of them occur?
If one occurs, they're all going to, this is a cascade of death, right? Good question anymore. Also pretty foundational stuff we'll do in here this week. All right, so again, same information, just in a more visual format. You have some kind of insult. These are all the things that happen in the cell. They're all the things we're losing. Your mitochondria contain within their membrane a lot of calcium and a lot of proteins that tell the cell to kill itself. So once you lose integrity of your mitochondrial membrane, the cell basically gets a suicide note. And it's like, oh, I wrote this, I guess I need to die. So there's just lots and lots of things happening. So we don't really get one of these. Once you have one, it's going to trigger all this other stuff and we're going to progress to death. Same thing, different form. Not dead yet, reversible, can recover. Necrosis, dead, no coming back. So it's gone forever. Say goodbye. And why? This is necrosis. This is how I think of necrosis in terms of ways to die. Necrosis is very messy and uncontrolled. Cells are kind of exploding, falling apart, bursting. Necrosis is always pathologic, that means it's always abnormal, it's always a lesion. It is never physiologic, meaning the body never uses it as a normal mechanism to accomplish anything. There are other forms of cell death that are physiologic. For example, you may not know that most of you as embryos have webbed digits, and we had to get rid of that tissue somehow. So that's an example of physiologic cell death. Necrosis is never that, it is always a problem. Whenever you see necrosis, it's bad, something bad happened. Because the cell membranes are breaking down and they're releasing their contents, some of the things they're releasing are basically all this inside stuff. The body recognizes these as signs of cell damage and it comes to respond. So these DAMPs, damage associated molecular patterns, these are inside cellular things. When those show up on the outside, the inflammatory response kicks in and it's like, uh-oh, we have a mess here, we need to come clean it up. So necrosis always induces inflammation because it's releasing all this stuff that should not ever be seen outside of the cell. Necrosis is pro-inflammatory. So again, you guys are in immunology right now. Have you learned about PERS yet? Pattern recognition receptors, TLRs,
Yes.
all that good stuff. So these are the molecules that are going to recognize these damage associated molecular patterns. There's also pathogen associated molecular patterns, which are probably the ones you're going to learn more about in immunology. DAMPs. DAMPs are coming from tissue, PAMPs are coming from pathogens. Again, some of these are important biomarkers. So liver enzymes in the blood are one biomarker of hepatocellular damage or necrosis. And really what happens with necrosis is it's kind of a vicious cycle. So we're going to talk more about inflammation in the next couple of weeks, but inflammation induces a lot of cellular damage. It's trying to kill pathogens, right? So it can be pretty aggressive, damaging, caustic. So necrosis is damaging, but then it's going to call an inflammation. The inflammation is going to cause additional damage in that tissue. Here's what that looks like under the microscope. Up here are live cells. I can see intact membranes. I can see intact nuclei. This is a seminoma. So this is a tumor of sperm cells, basically. All these up here are live, happy tumor cells. Right about here, I see degeneration. I can still see nuclei, they're intact. I can see cell membranes, they're intact, but these cells do not look very happy right here at the border. And then from like here down, it's just a vast pink wasteland. The vast pink wasteland is necrosis. See all these little, I hate this, I'm gonna say the word I hate, all these little dit dots. All these little purple things. These are all nuclear fragments. So this is pycnosis, karyorrhexis, karyolysis. This is shrinking, fragmentation, rupture of nuclei. So again, spot the difference. Normal nucleus, fragmented, dead, condensed. See how dark they are compared to these? These are kind of a light purple. These are like dark, dark, dark. So they've shrunken down, condensed, broken up, disappeared. Is it better to necrose or to fade away? They're kind of the same thing. So all of this pink is necrosis. A lot of the pink stuff is cytoplasm. Pink is usually protein. Blue is like nucleic acids. So you're going to get a lot of the same changes as degeneration. The cells are going to be potentially swollen, but you're also going to progress. So you're going to have cells that are sloughing off. You're going to have cells that don't even look like cells anymore. They just look like pink schmoo. You're going to get calcium accumulating in the lesion. So these are all signs that necrosis has happened. Okay, comparing degeneration and necrosis on histone. This is degeneration, so the cells are swollen, they're extremely unhappy, but I can still see membranes, I can still see intact nuclei. They still look like cells, they just look like very unhappy cells. Down here, This used to be a renal tubule, it's filled with pink wasteland, these are all necrotic epithelial cells, they've sloughed off. There's nothing to even suggest that these used to be cells, it's just pink wasteland. Here's kind of a half and half, so here's some degenerative epithelial cells that are still hanging on. Here's some necrotic cells in the lumen, they've sloughed off, they're shrunken, they're dark, they're very pink. Same here, all these tubules are filled with necrotic cells, necrotic debris. Grossly, the appearance of necrosis is super variable. Grossly. So necrosis is a little bit frustrating for you guys because necrosis does not really have a specific gross appearance. It takes on the color of whatever is happening around it. So if you're in an area with a lot of hemorrhage and necrosis, it's going to be red. If you're in an area where, for example, you have a blood clot that's cutting off blood supply to a part of the tissue and it's necrotic because it doesn't have any blood flow, it's going to be white or super pale because there's no blood in it. If there's a lot of white blood cells in it, it's going to be white. So if you think of pus, that's necrosis with white cells. It's white and creamy. So necrosis in itself does not have any one specific color. Sometimes tissues are pale, sometimes they're really dark red if there's a lot of blood in them. Things that are more reliable. Necrotic tissue is usually softer than normal. It can be very soft. So when it's very soft and it starts kind of crumbling and falling apart, we call it friable. Pathology word for super duper soft. Areas of necrosis occasionally are very well demarcated from surrounding tissue. So look for the line of demarcation. That's not always true. It kind of depends what's going on. Remember that necrosis is pro-inflammatory. So you're going to start with an area of necrosis, but eventually inflammatory cells are going to come in that border and they're going to kind of obscure the junction between normal and abnormal. It'll be a little less well demarcated. If that happens, there will be a red rim around the necrotic area, and that's the active inflammation. First part of inflammation is your blood vessels in that area dilate, allow blood cells and blood products to come in. So acute inflammation is often red. Look for a red rim around it, confirming that inflammation is going on. So we have necrosis. If you're on a surface, so your skin, any of your mucous membranes, GI, peripheral, any of that stuff, necrosis of the surface will cause the epithelial part of the surface to come off. So it'll ulcerate and slough. Ulcer is a new word for you guys. I have to make sure to skip ahead a little bit. So here's what necrosis looks like on a mucosal surface for this little diagram. So right here is our basement membrane. So all of this is epidermis. This is dermis down here in the pink. So with an erosion, we've lost some of the epithelium, but we still have some epithelium. We're not down to the basement membrane. If it's an ulcer, you are at or below the basement membrane. And the difference in appearance of these is this is where all the blood vessels are. So an ulcer is going to bleed. If you expose the tissue underneath the basement membrane, it will be red and bloody, like so. So this pig's ear, all of this is ulcerated mucosa. You can see it's pretty well demarcated. Wherever it's bright red, that's exposed dermis. That's the stuff that's exposed and bleeding. Same here, here's hair and skin. This area has sloughed. The dermis underneath it is bright red and kind of raw. The skin over here does not look healthy. It looks kind of bruised purple. Here we're looking at an esophagus. And each one of these areas is a little focal ulceration. These two ulcers, this pig and whatever this is, a dog or something, these are very acute. This ulcer is chronic. So these ulcers have been going on a very short period of time. This ulcer has been going on a long time. Do you guys see any descriptive differences between those two that I might be using to tell if this is acute or chronic? What's the difference in how those look? I'd say they're all kind of in the well demarcated. This one's probably the best demarcated. What else?
In the esophagus, does it look like maybe the tissue around the ulcers is healthy or like normal looking?
Describe.
pale, clean,
Oh, okay, this stuff.
yeah. Warm and color.
Can I direct your attention? I got really excited that you were gonna say the thing. Can I direct your attention to immediately around the ulcer?
And more bright colors.
These have halos. Feel this with your eyes. If I rub my finger over this without looking at it, is it raised, flat, or depressed?
It's a little raised.
It's depressed in the center and raised around the rim. The raised rim is a tissue response. That raised rim means the body is trying to proliferate and cover over the ulcer. So this ulcer has been here a while. These ulcers just happened because I don't see any attempt that the body is trying to fix this. So it just happened. That makes sense? We're gonna talk more about what this change is, that little raised rim in the next couple days. Back it up, back it up. And then remember, mineralization, dystrophic mineralization goes along with necrosis. So if you see localized calcification in the middle of a area of fairly well demarcated stuff that's surrounded by a red rim of inflammation, necrosis, that's another hint. Remember that mineralization in tissue is going to be bright, screaming white. It's going to be chalky or gritty, and it's going to have a hard texture if there's enough of it. Alright, so here's a couple different examples of how necrosis can look. This is some skeletal muscle from a cow. Here's the skin surface. Kind of an older picture. And describing this, I would say that within the skeletal muscle, there is a large focal, well-demarcated area of muscle that is pale yellow tan. There are areas of softening and cavitation. There's a multifocal red discoloration, and this whole lesion is surrounded by a thin red rim, dark red rim of tissue. Everybody see that? So this is necrosis with a red rim of inflammation. I said it.
There are other points of interest, like on the bottom.
There's one right here, there's one right there, and they're all white with red rim.
It's the like
So
white,
this,
it's
maybe-
the white streak on the top.
That might be fat, that might be like dermal fat. This is an edible creature. That looks kind of delicious to me.
However,
Right. Sorry, vegetarian.
it's even nice.
Here's another example of necrosis. See how different already these two things look? Thing they have in common, well, this one's starting to get soft. So it's soft in the middle. This out here would probably be firm. This would be more similar to the texture of muscle around it. Because this is pretty acute. This just happened a wee bit ago. This is maybe hours old. How do I know? Pending. We're gonna have to wait till we get to acute and chronic. I can tell you that. It's for now my secret. All right, here's necrosis in a brain. I would say for this one, the cortex of the brain, largely focused on the gray matter, but also occasionally expanding into the white matter, is a multifocal, variably sized, ranging from like, wow, if those are centimeters, that's a tiny horse brain. Those inches, someone use non-science units? Sorry, I'm really thrown off by this measuring scale. Whatever, variably sized, poorly demarcated areas of soft, dark, brown, black. I don't know, exudate stuff. The lesion is these soft pockets of, they look like brown, black goo. This necrosis is red because there's blood in here. That's why it looks so different from the other one. This one was probably an ischemic lesion, one where we cut off the blood supply really quick, so it's white. This one bled into the necrosis, so it's red. Here's some more subtle necrosis for you guys. So this is the heart of a dog. And I would say for this one, we're looking at the epicardial surface. Multifocally on the epicardial surface, taking up about, I can't see the whole heart, but I'm guessing from this, it's maybe 10% or less of the endocardial surface are multifocal, small, white, kind of irregular to circular lesions that are kind of red in the middle and then have a pale rim. You see how guys, these look like little circles? You get really, really close to them. So these are all small areas of necrosis. They're starting to coalesce. So when you have multifocal areas that are starting to kind of bleed into each other, it's multifocal coalescing. So these are little areas of myocardial necrosis in the heart. Did that, check. Here's another, just showing you the range of how variable necrosis can look depending on different tissues, depending on how the necrosis happened, what the process is. So these are all tongues with necrosis, but they all look really, really different. This one right here. So there's this area right here. Does everybody see that? And then this area back here, that's all that's left of normal tongue. So look at the texture. This has a tongue texture. That is not tongue texture. The mucosa from all of this is gone. So all of the mucosa from this has sloughed off and it's gone. You can see the red rim here. Here it's kind of opposite, that the necrosis is everywhere but the circle. It's outside the circle. And then here's the red rim around the necrosis. Same with here. There's a red rim right at the border of the necrotic tissue and the healthy tissue. This red rim is a tissue reaction. It helps you tell that this is a real lesion that happened in life while the animal was alive and its tissues were responding, right? That red rim tells you it's real. Because remember we talked about how mucosa can slough. Mucosa can slough with autolysis. So if mucosa comes off with autolysis, there will be no reaction to it. It'll just fall off. The dermis underneath won't bleed, the tissue underneath won't bleed, there won't be this reactive rim. Body's dead, nobody cares. This is real. This happened in real life. Here's another tongue. This is another example of an ischemic lesion where we've cut off blood supply. I would say this lesion is pretty poorly demarcated. And I would say this is probably more acute than this, because this hasn't even had time for the dead mucosa to fall off yet. See all this gray? Everywhere it's gray, that is dead tongue. But it doesn't know it's dead yet. It happened so fast. The mucosa is still on there. So eventually this will probably progress to look more like this. Here's one that's a little different. These are more like puncture wounds in the tongue. You guys see that? So there are multifocal deep depressions or punctures in the tongue. These areas are surrounded by a thick rim of soft, pliable, dark brown to black tissue. So that's necrosis that's going in, not on so much on the surface, it's going deep into the tissue. Yeah.
I guess I have a question about the sloughing. So if it sloughs off, like due to an artifact.
Yeah.
It's not gonna bleed, but in this case, if the sloughing, it would bleed because the person would have the red rim.
Sorry, say that again.
I guess I just don't know the difference between like post the artifact sloughing and then.
Artifact sloughing, no bleeding,
Okay.
right? So if you have an ulcer. Back. If you have an ulcer that exposes this under the base membrane, it will bleed if it happened in life. If you have necrosis that happens in life, there will be a red rim of inflammation around the tissue if it is of significant duration. We're not quite here yet, but we're starting to get a little red pink right there. So even really early, you start to get some.
A follow-up question to that one. So nothing bleeds though after it is dead.
Nothing bleeds when it's dead.
So then the difference would be appearance of blood that was there. Like when we're thinking of sloughing, artifact versus.
Think of this for ulcer and for sloughing, it would look like this, but there would not be any red. It would just be falling off.
Angry. No.
Y'all, I hate the word angry. As a descriptor, it doesn't tell me anything. I can't draw angry, right? I understand what you mean. By now, I've heard enough times that I know inflamed is what you're trying to say. It's congested, hyperemic, red, whatever. Yes, if it's postmortem, it will not be angry because it's inert. It's dead tissue.
On slide with the tongues,
Slide
left, bottom left image, and then the lesion that's all the way on the right of that picture on the bottom.
all the way on the right on the bottom.
Call that umbilicated or just suppressed? Cause it looks like it kind of has a little.
They technically are kind of umbilicated, I guess. I would probably use the word punctured instead. I don't know that there's a huge difference, but these look like something poked in there to me.
I'll use what you used.
A what?
I'll use what you used.
Okay, I mean, it doesn't matter, whatever, as long as you get the point across. Other questions about necrosis? Tissues pushing up daisies. Alright, so degeneration versus necrosis. Lot of important differences, this slide is pretty key. Degeneration is reversible if we get rid of the stimulus. Necrosis, we have passed a point of no return, we are not coming back, it is not reversible, we are dead forever. Degeneration tissues are often swollen, more pale, more soft, more wet, more heavy. Necrosis can also be swollen, pale, soft, wet, and heavy. But the color is variable, it might be red, it might be pale. It might be swollen early when you're adding a bunch of fluid and inflammatory cells. But you've also lost tissue, so more chronically, it'll be shrunken. So it's kind of a, is it an added or lost? It depends where we are in the process. Very early, it's gonna be added, it's gonna be acute swelling, it's gonna be acute inflammation. Late, it's gonna be loss of tissue, it's gonna be atrophy, which we haven't talked about yet, but we're about to in a second. Degeneration, remember it's reversible, so everything is still intact. Our house still has walls and a floor and a ceiling, we can still rebuild. This house has exploded, it's on fire, it's done, it's not coming back, we can't rebuild, we need to start from scratch. Calcification, not present in degeneration, is present in necrosis. In fact, it's one of the hallmarks of necrosis, dystrophic calcification. Questions?
So that red line in necrosis, is that like a point,
The red line?
you know, like the red line that goes around a lot of necrotic patients? That's an inflammatory response, but you're not gonna see degeneration on the necrotic side, because they're all necrotic, right?
They often go together, so it's another important point about pathology. We're teaching you individual things, but they're often present together in multiples. So you start with degeneration, right? Suppose I hit you with some sort of insult, your cells degenerate, I don't remove it, they then start to necrose. So there's a period in there where we have both degeneration and necrosis because we're kind of transitioning from one to the other. If the insult gets larger, a larger area will degenerate, so you'll have ongoing both processes at the same time. Yeah.
Would very like severe burns fall under degeneration then?
A
Or is that-
severe burn,
Like,
so remember we talked about sunburn as
yes,
an episode, if it's a burn, that's gonna be tissue necrosis, yeah. Before you will get that, you'll get that red tissue, it'll be a little bit sore, it'll be a little bit active, that's degeneration.
Okay.
But it's not necrosis, it starts sloughing off. Right? So a severe burn will induce necrosis, a mild burn will induce degeneration plus or minus necrosis depending on how.
but then that like. That healing process of the burn, like it does take a while, like that's not considered reversible, that's just the healing.
We're gonna talk about that in chronic week, how things heal and repair, it is not reversible, necrosis is not reversible. You can repair and replace those cells, but those cells are dead forever, gotta make new ones. The degenerating cells can come back and survive those actual cells. Any more? Yeah.
So for the was that acute or chronic necrosis?
Which one?
I think there is a border between the toxic one and the,
This one?
I know the one I'm.
This one?
Yeah,
You're asking me how chronic this is?
is it acute or chronic?
I think all of these I would call fairly acute. I would say this one is the most acute. This one is like subacute. That's what we use when it's faster than acute or per acute. These are both, I would call these acute. You guys are like way ahead of the curve with your questions. This is like week 5 stuff. Fibrosis is the hallmark of chronicity. So I don't see any fibrosis or scar tissue in here. So these are all within, this one might be hours. This is like minutes to hours. These are like hours, maybe to days. I think I would consider all that pretty cute. Acute, not cute. They are cute though. More? That's me. And I'm pretty sure that was actually the Tiger King because this was at a mall in Ohio. When he was doing his thing. My parents love to tell this story about how good I was with animals as a little kid. They're like, and it fit the next kid in line. It was so good with you. This is so exploitive. Thanks, Mom.